All right, welcome back. We are COMP1116. That's Game Programming 3 in the fall 2025 semester at Georgian, and it is week 11, part 1 of our broadcast and recording together. In this part, um, we're going to add more to the enemy capabilities. So last week, what we ended up doing was we got the enemy to move around. We put together a nav mesh with patrol points. And what we also did was we did the kind of built a basic patrol action for the enemy. Now we've done this kind of stuff before last semester, last first half of semester, I should say. I feel it's like last semester now. But it's, yeah, the first half semester, we kind of did that for the drone and everything else. But this is slightly different for the enemy because we're looking at a third person perspective. They walk around, right? So we built a blend space. We did a bunch of stuff last time to prepare for today, right? So today we're going to do the first enemy attack action. They're not going to actually do any damage today. That's going to be left for next week. We're going to actually do more next week with attacking and all that kind of stuff. But this week, the enemy is actually just going to perform the attack action. And so we can see it being done. Now, there's going to also be something we're going to use called motion warping, right? And motion warping allows us to make the enemy very challenging for us to get away from. And we'll see how that works in a bit. So again, stuff that we're going to do this week is we're also going to add an AI perception system. We're going to get rid of the sensing sphere that we use, which is very basic. Remember what we have right now, if we look at the project, and again, this is just a copy of the project from last week. So if I was to run this thing, and if I run in, you can see that as soon as I come close enough, as an example, then he'll come at me. That's what he does, even if I'm coming up from behind him. It's not realistic. And I mean, maybe he'll hear me or something like that. You can still use a sensing sphere as well if you really wanted to, for other reasons. Let's say if clearly if the your character is close enough to the enemy, as an example, then you want them to quote unquote hear you, especially if you're wearing if you're not stealthing it in or something like that. But you know, um, it's gonna be better with the sensing sphere. Oh, sorry, with AI sensing, which we're going to talk about in a bit. So we're going to use something called the AI perception system to turn on upon sensing. We're going to build an attack montage for the enemy. We're also going to, once we start looking at the enemy and seeing that there are similarities between the enemy and the character, well, then we have to think about, is there a better way of doing this? Because if we're duplicating, code, then you got to figure that there might be a base class that we can use that kind of both the enemy and the character can share, right? As opposed to having their own classes completely separate. All right, so that's something that we can think of. And then what we're going to do is add the enemy AI attack. We're going to try and figure that out. And then use motion warping to make it more challenging. Again, this one is due Friday. That's tomorrow. So first what we want to do is I want to do some work in C++, but before we start, like always, I have a project here that I've copied in from ICE 9. So here is a copy of ICE 9. And what I'm going to do here is two things. First, I'm going to go to Tools. I'm going to open Visual Studio. So this is going to open the Visual Studio component, of this project, which is the C++ side. There we are. And once this is open, then what I want to do is I want to file, save all, and I want to close off the editor. I want to put this up on DevOps. And again, let's just use view terminal. And if I go to view terminal, then I can have, and if I was to see if this is a Git project, you can clearly see on the bottom right here, let's see if I am on the video here, on the bottom right here that there isn't any. It says add to source control. So Visual Studio detects if it's part of source control, and it's not, right? So what we want to do is do all those commands. So git init, git add dot, and this is going to assume a couple things. One, you've got large file support like before, all those kind of things. that we're going to get moving on. We also have a git ignore and a git attributes file that we've copied in from the previous projects. So that's all the same stuff. I'm just waiting for this to add. In the meantime, while this is doing that business, we're going to go over to our DevOps site and create a new repository. I'll do the proper project when this thing is like actually going to work. There we go. So in here, we're going to add in a new repo. So we're just going to go new repository, and we're going to make this ICE10. No README file, just like before. And we have some steering instructions here that I'm going to copy. And I'm going to continue with this one. So I did git init, git add dot. Now we need to do git commit -m initial commit. And we also want to change the branch name to main, right? Then after we've done that, if we right click and we press enter, that should change everything and put everything up to DevOps if everything goes well. So this is not a small project anymore. It's like 2.5 gigabytes or 2.7 gigabytes. And again, your project is probably going to balloon to around that no matter what you do, especially if you start adding things more and more stuff to your project, assets from different places and so on. It's going to get there, and it won't take long. Like honestly, I'm not sure how big your projects are right now. I don't know. Did you have a size you want to share, Andrew? How big is your project? I bet you it's probably in the 2 gig range. Or anybody else? Gigabyte. 3. See? So it doesn't take long, and that's why, look, this is 3.4. Mine is 3.4. This one here, but yours might be a lot bigger than mine, right? Eventually. And mine's just like a toy project. That's all it is, right? So you can see it takes quite a bit of time. Now, a couple problems we mentioned before. Sometimes if it takes too long for you to push stuff up to DevOps, you will time out, and you can change your HTTP version to HTTP 1, which will, again, I find that as a hack that will work a little bit quicker when it comes to putting things up on DevOps. But you can see here now, I've already done my job. There it is. There's DevOps. It's working. And that's where we're going to start. So first thing first, we put it up on DevOps. Then what I want to do is I want to control F5. Well, let's see what I got here before I do that. So it says we're not adding anything new. We're going to go into the enemy.h file, and this is where we're going to tend to replace some stuff. So I'm just to clean this up, I'm just going to close all tabs and click on one. I want to close them. I like to do this sometimes because this way it's kind of a little easier to see everything, especially when you have a lot of files. We do have quite a few files now. Starting off with the enemy.h, this is what we're asked to do. And so it says replace the sensing radius with pawn sensing. So again, I'm going to just grab this line of code. And I'll talk about this in a second. The pawn sensing component. So am I looking at the right thing? It looks like it's been already changed. That's weird. Did I already do it? And this one? That would be very bad. That's not what I wanted. Arg. Let's see. Did I give you the wrong thing? Source. If it's true, I got to remove it because I want to start from the beginning with you guys. Yeah, I did. And does this include the other stuff too? One sec. Hold on a sec, guys. Yeah. nix that. 1 second. So we're just going to go to manage repositories. I'll be okay. I knew something was wrong. I'm going to go to ICE 10 and just delete that one and just do that again. What I always do is I prepare. This is my thing, right? I prepare with everything that we're doing. And then from there, I should be good to go. So what I'm going to do instead is last week I put up ICE 9. I'm going to start from there, ICE 9. Okay. And we'll go from this one. So I'm going to go into ICE 9 and pull it down. So that's what I'm going to go to. So we'll go back to repositories and I'm going to go to ICE 9. There we go. And I'm just going to pull that in. Download as a zip? I think so. I think I download that as a zip. Pull it right there because it doesn't exist right now. Weird. So that'll take a second. Sorry, guys. But what I really want to do, like I said, is I want to switch out the pawn sensing component or the sensing sphere with the sensing component. And I'll talk about why and how it works. There's a couple things we have to do. Pawn sensing is included, I believe, in the AI module, which is pretty good. So that way we don't have to reinvent that. We don't have to redo that. And we have the AI module in, I believe. And we'll check that out in a second. And if not, we'll add it in. And sorry for this. So let's go back to this. So this is what I want to do. I want to replace my sensing sphere, my sensing radius with this pawn sensing stuff. Okay. So that's the first thing. And there is a built-in or a function that I want to use called pawn scene. And what pawn scene is going to do is it's going to help us react to when the pawn is seen. And the pawn is seen when you're going to see this, like, basically a vision cone that's going to come out of the enemy, which is kind of cool. And we also want to be able to visualize the vision cones. We're going to actually create a little helper function for this one as well, as we're going to get there. So one day when this feels like downloading, and it's pretty big, so we're getting there. I apologize about this. Typically I'm ready for this, but I must have polluted my the stuff that I did, and that's why it is the way it is. So to prepare for this, again, I'm just going to make a new repository called ICE 10 because I removed the other one. So we'll do that too. There we go. And then this way we'll be able to get moving with this new one in a second. And, as long as this continues to download. And we're going to be good soon. One other thing about builds that I want to talk about. I know that I keep giving you the build task to do on your in-class exercise, and hopefully it's getting easier for you. Builds are finicky. It really depends on, like I said, what assets you include when you try and build. That's good. It's ready to go now. When you try and build your project, including an asset that is too big, or it could also have a lot of pieces to it. Like let's say, I kind of think about assets as having legs. It's really weird. I have the main asset, and then there's a bunch of stuff that it connects to. And if it has a lot of legs, kind of thing, then unfortunately for you, it means that you're going to include a lot more stuff with that asset when you do your build compared just to the asset itself. Example would be like, I don't know, you add in a building, but that building has textures and that building has other stuff that's in there. Okay, here we go. So here's ICE 9. Let's try this again. So I'm just going to go in there, and just like before, we have to rebuild this project. So let's do a generate Visual Studio project files. Now we just downloaded this thing. So this should be okay. We're going to launch it and do everything for a second. I know I've wasted a little bit of time, but better this than not having a good demo for you guys, which I think is ultimately more important. So this is that. That's good. And now I can just double click and it's going to rebuild everything. This is right from DevOps, so it should work just fine. And also, I'm not on a school computer. I'm on a machine at home, which means ultimately I have control compared to not having any control. All right. Let's take a look here. Sorry about this, like watching paint peel. It's going to take its time. We need to do this. All right, so now we're launching everything. And again, if you're watching this video, just please fast forward, to the point where this is all working. Let's try this again. So and now one thing that you were asked to do was, and one thing that was missing from last week, I guess I should build this out too, is the whole. That's why I should have known. Uh, is the whole other part that you're missing. So I have to go through that with you again because I know some people always have challenges. That's why I knew things are broken. So I'm like, wait, I have patrol points. So let's do that part because that was for you to do last week. Okay, so I'm going to go through that this week, and then we'll start from there. So yeah, I jumped the gun. I was like, I'm so excited about what we're going to do today, and then I was like, wait, but we didn't review last week's stuff. So let's review last week's stuff that I had you do first. And the stuff I had you guys do, it was this, creating patrol points. And what I basically said was you're going to make an actor named Patrol Point, right? And you're going to make up this thing in Visual Studio. Let's do that now really quickly. So I'll just go through the last week's exercise quick. So again, what I want to do is I want to make a new C++ class of type actor, and it's going to be called Patrol Point. There we go. And this is going to launch our Visual Studio. So remember, I'm giving you little tasks to do in your in-class exercise that are going to be similar to some degree with the stuff that you need to do for your final test, right? So your final test, again, we should not lose sight of it as we're sitting at week 11. It's only 3 weeks away. We don't have very much time left together this semester, right? So yeah. Okay, so there's Patrol Point. I'm going to wait till this is launched. One thing that we should do is once this is done patching, then I'm going to go File, Save All, close this off, and then do all the stuff that I normally do, which is, again, I want to get rid of these boilerplate comments from the CPP. And I'm also going to get rid of the boilerplate comments from the .h. Go. Still running ReSharper. That's why it's taking me so long. So now once I've done that, I want to move my public areas so they're together. Again, that's just me because I want to be able to manage one public area instead of two public section. There we go. Really slow. Okay, so that's the first part. Then the next part is putting in the stuff that I want. So 4 declarations like we talked about at the top. And these 4 declarations are important because it gives us a sphere component and static mesh component that we're going to be using in our here. So again, what we have is in the public section, we also want to have another patrol point. This is a redo of what we did in the first half of semester, where we had each patrol point will tell you about the next one. It's almost like a linked list, where one patrol point is one node, and then the other patrol point is the next node and the next node. We'll talk about that next semester too, because when we're going to go into AI, we'll be doing something similar with nodes in AI. So there you go. So now you have the patrol radius and the patrol mesh. That's kind of something similar to what we had in the first half with the patrol point that we made then. Patrol points are actually very, very easy to do because there's not a lot of stuff. We want to add a couple of includes in the patrol point.cpp, right, which is what you guys should have done. And then really at the end of the day, it's all this, which gets added in. And once we have this part, then for the most part, you have your patrol point. That's it. You don't really mess with begin play or tick or anything else like that for patrol point. That's it. So let's do that. We'll save everything, and then we'll control F5. And then we should have the patrol point C++ class working, and it should build properly as we go into Unreal Engine. So that's the first part of what you have to do for your in-class exercise 9, which should be pretty simple for you at this point. Did anyone have trouble with patrol point stuff? Hopefully not. Good. Yeah, and it should be that way for you too now. Again, what I'm doing is slowly getting you more and more C++, and you'll see more of that even more next semester, right? So that way it's like, we're going to be doing more stuff on the C++ side to get you more comfortable. All right, so now we've got this up. My resolution is pretty high. Let's put this back. There we go. Sorry, so I got a 4K monitor. There we go. So now patrol point's there, and what I want to do is I want to go to blueprints, make a new folder called patrol, and then inside there make a new blueprint class of type patrol point. There we go, and we're going to call this BP_patrol point. There we go. Now, what I mentioned to you last time was you could, for the mesh component, because there's going to be a patrol point mesh. I'm just going to bring this up here, and I'm also going to go to editor preferences, and I want to go from default to main window because I don't want to do that anymore. But what I want to talk about is the patrol point mesh. There isn't a mesh that you can use that's built in for the patrol point mesh that looks like a cone. And like what I said to you guys before is what you could do is you could turn on your show engine content. Showing engine content, if you turn that on, it gives you another folder. And this folder allows you to look at things like basic shapes. So here's a basic shape cone. I want to use that. So I'm going to grab that, copy it. And I want to go back to my patrol folder and put that in. So copy, and then I can turn off the show engine content because I don't want to mess with that. So there it is. So I can use this cone as the patrol point mesh, this part. So clicking on patrol point mesh now, I can use a cone. There it is. And then probably want to bring it up. Now the cone has a pivot point here. So you probably want to bring it up so it's at least at the semicircle or hemisphere is what I mean. The hemisphere mark for this. So it may have to go a little bit higher. There we go. That's the hemisphere mark, half a sphere. And then once the hemisphere mark is up, that's good. Then what I want to also do is change the default material. You can use, there's a lot of default materials that are in here. You can use a very basic material and change it, right? Like for example, material 2 or whatever. You can always do that. You can search for something a little shinier. It's really up to you. It's just a representation for us when we do our patrol point, so that way it seems that it's pretty good. So for me, I'm just going to search for something like gold, because that's what we used before. Well, gold, I'll be all right. And there is a gold bar that I can use, and it kind of looks weird, but it's fine. There it is. There's that gold bar. Kind of gives you like, I don't know, some weird messed up material, right? But it doesn't matter. It's just a representation for us. Then I want to go to the patrol point radius, and I want to turn that thickness to 2 so I can see what that looks like. I also want to make it so that I can see them. So if I type in hidden, I want to undo hidden in game, so I can see the patrol points. Compile and save. So that's the first thing. And once I have those, then what I want to do is I want to kind of create a series of patrol points. And I put them on the side here, only because I don't want to necessarily go around this little house that I built. So again, what I would do is probably put a patrol point here, and then alt drag until I have the 4 of them. There we go. So alt drag nice and quickly. And then I'm going to use the eyedropper tool for the next patrol point, and it only picks patrol points. It doesn't pick him or someplace else. It'll pick that patrol point, and from that one, I can pick this one, and for this one, I can pick this one. Yeah, that was there. And for the last one, I can pick the first one. So it kind of creates almost like this loop, right? He also has a target that he's going to go to, and patrol point, he's going to go to the sword right now, but I'm going to choose instead, we're going to choose the nearest patrol point to the player, which is patrol point 3 for now. And now let's see if he's going to patrol. So he's going to go to the patrol point, and then from there, he's going to stop, because that's what we have so far. Okay, but we've created the first part of our stuff, which is the patrol point itself. So next, once we've done that, then we need to make some changes. So on action radius overlap, we can complete it. It's been commented out. Well, we can complete this on the enemy class. So again, what I want to do is I want to go here, file, save all, and I want to close off this project, go back to Visual Studio, open up the enemy class. So again, I'm going to go to source, enemy.h, and enemy.cpp. I'm going to need them anyway in a bit. And scroll down to the this part right here where I've commented this stuff out. Notice that there is a piece here that's here. I'm just going to uncomment it. So now it's there, and it needs a patrol point, and we can add in the patrol point include here. So now that we have it, we can include it. There we go. Okay. And once this is done, we should check it, right? So Control S to save all, let's say, save all, and Control F5 to launch Unreal Engine, and it should just work. Let's see. Okay, it's succeeded. So I added in this last week only because I was like, hey, I want to prepare for what this is going to look like. And what this really does is it clears the patrol timer, as an example, if the other thing that it hits is the patrol point. And the reason why we want to clear the patrol timer is because we want the timer is going to work on a on an interval, and we want to stop it, change the patrol target where he's going to go next, and then when we go check patrol target, if I go to definition for this, then what it's going to do is it's going to set up a new timer. It's going to check to see if we have a patrol target, and if it does, it sets up a new timer. And when it's done, it's going to call patrol timer finished, which means when I'm finished, it's going to move to target. It's going to wait, basically. It's a delay of 2 seconds. And then it's going to wait to go to the new target. That's what it's going to do. Okay? So really, at the end of the day, when he has his target, he waits for about 2 seconds before he starts moving. We may not want this behavior. If you want it to move right away, we can always call move to target first. All right, so now that we've done that, let's check it. So we're going back up here, and if I press play, then if he goes to his first patrol timer, or patrol target, sorry, he should go there, and once he's there, he's going to get his new directions where he's going to go to next, and he's going to go to the next one. There it is. Okay, so he's going to keep patrolling now. And if I come within his radius, he's going to turn around and try and kill me. All right, so that was that part. And that's it. That was all for that. That was the only thing you really need to do. You need to make your shipping build and all that stuff. So now we're up to date with what we should have done. I'm just going to close this one off. And this is a great place to file, save all. We've tested everything. And now we're going to do that same thing again. So go view, terminal, and we're going to do that same dance we just did. Get init, get a dot, get commit minus m, initial commit. I'm too fast for my terminal. Go. And then what we want to do is get those steering instructions. So I'm going to grab this. We don't have the get branch part, but we're going to add that in now. As soon as this is done committing. There it is. Get branch minus m main, and then right click and press enter, and this should push everything up nicely. All right. Well, you've seen it twice. The first time was wrong. This time is right. But at least you've seen it for those of you who didn't have a chance to finish the in-class exercise 9. I think it was pretty simple. But again, it's trying to get you to think about, we did the patrol point purely with blueprints last time. This time we're doing it with C++, and there's going to be more C++ for you to do for this in-class exercise 10 that's coming up. And then hopefully by next semester, I'll just give you more and more and more. All right, so now that that's done, let's go back to launching. Well, actually, we don't have to launch. Like I said, I can go back into the enemy. Let's try this again. So now, let's do this now. All right, so back here. Pawn sensing. So I want to add this in. So the pawn sensing component is going to be added back in. And we want to replace the sensing radius. So the best way to do this is like literally copy paste on top of it. So sensing radius gone, pawn sensing in. And as a result, we need to add in a for declaration. Here's my for declaration. See where it says perception pawn sensing component.h? Or I can use a for declaration here, and that's what I want to do. So that's what I want to put in there. It should be in here. There we are. And that's the pawn sensing component. There we go. Okay, so that's the first part. The other part is it says remove it. Well, remove the on sensing radius overlap and also add in this because we don't need that on sensing overlap part. And that is down here. On sensing radius overlap doesn't make sense because now we don't have a sensing sphere. So now we're going to do this pawn scene. Okay, so that's the second part. Now that we have pawn scene, we definitely want to generate the definition. So there's the definition of pawn scene, getting it ready for everything else. In the enemy CPP, we need to remove references to the sensing radius in the constructor function. So that means way up here, all these are all red now because there is no sensing radius anymore. And then what we want to do is we want to add in the pawn sensing component right here. And I want to put that in just underneath this. So that's the pawn sensing. It doesn't know what the pawn sensing component is, and it says, do you want to include, make that include? I do. Perception. All right, that's the perception system. And once we've done that part, then we want to go to the initialize enemy function. So again, up here, notice that there are some things. We can file save. What I want to do is I want to be able to jump to the different pieces. There are some errors, like for example, this on sensing radius overlap, that's got to go because we don't have that anymore. So let's get rid of that because that's causing errors in my code. And so is this initialize enemy is what this is telling me to replace. So I want to replace that part with this. So that part gets replaced with this part. And we're good to go. So what this does is basically say this. Okay, so on scene pawn is part of, it's kind of like another event similar to on component begin overlap, same kind of thing, but it belongs to the pawn sensing component. And if I was going to do this on the blueprint side, you just use on scene pawn, okay? But we're going to make this, we're going to dynamically bind this default event to the pawn scene function that we're going to be declaring. That's what this does. That's what this add dynamic does. It creates a binding between our local function here in C++ with the built-in function in for the component itself, the pawn sensing component. Notice, if I go back up here, one more thing. The pawn sensing component, notice what it does is it does not set up an attachment because it's a component. Components like this don't have a visual representation, and they don't need to be added to the hierarchy. They're in another section that you're going to see inside of the blueprint on the blueprint side when we come back to the editor. All right, we remove the onsensing alias, and then we want to do in the pawn scene function, we want to update it to do this. So let's send the pawn scene. Let's go back to that. So that's kind of down here where we just added it in. There it is. And let's talk about what this does. So basically what we're doing is this now. We're saying when the pawn, that means when the character or anything is seen that we want to detect, then scene pawn, if it's equal to null pointer, then return, which means, let's go back up to this. So pawn sensing itself, right? What it does, if I go back to the initialized enemy, pawn sensing has an on-scene pawn built-in function. It's going to be bound to pawn scene. The on-scene pawn, basically what it does is it has some things that it passes over, and one of them is the actor that it saw, whatever it's seen at all, right? If it sees an actor, back to the pawn scene one, and that pawn that it's seen, it passes in. If it's empty, so it hasn't seen anything, then it won't. We don't want it to go here. We just want it to return. We don't want it just to link in and do nothing. If, on the other hand, I can cast the thing that I'm seeing to my main character, that means I'm seeing the main character instead of something else, because it'll detect everything. It'll detect the floor. It'll detect any other pawn that you have, as an example. You know, well, anything that the floor is not pawn, it's an actor, but any other pawn, anything else, it'll detect it. And so what we want to say is when we see the actor, the character, then we want to kind of put up a UE log, which is going to be in the output log of what we saw. Then player detected is something that we're going to use. We already have the player detected function, which means it's going to start getting faster and go towards the player, just like it did with the sensing radius. Okay, that's what this thing does. So this is a direct drop-in replacement from what we had before. Control F5. So now what we should see is that the pawn sensing component is going to look different. We won't be able to see it though, right? And we want to be able to visualize it, as you'll see in a second. But it's a really neat component. There are different sensing components that you can use. You can use hearing and sight and a bunch of other ones, which are really cool too. It's all built into Unreal Engine. Again, I always marvel at all the stuff that they've given us compared to Unity. All right, so let's take a look here. So there's our enemy. Notice that there isn't the other radius anymore. This is a good sign. Let's open up the enemy blueprint to show you what that looks like. So if I go to the viewport now, and if I hover out, then the pawn sensing component looks like this. Wow, right? Take a look at that. So it has a vision cone, this kind of like frustum that it kind of creates. By the way, I've done this by hand in Unity, where you create your own frustum cone, and it kind of gives you line of sight, which is what this is. This is kind of like a line of sight thing. How much can I see? Can I detect anything? You can decide the peripheral vision angle. What I've chosen is 45 degrees. So if you want to make this wider, so if you want to make them see like 180 degrees, or whatever. But this guy's, he's wearing a helmet. And so that's why I've said like he's going to only have, 45 degrees angle because of the helmet that he's wearing, right? So that's what he has. But you see that there's other spheres here that we can also use. And that's all built in to this component itself. Okay, so that's the pawn sensing component. But we can't visualize this thing. So let's test it first to see if it works. So again, running it. If he sees me, he should just start running at me just like before. So now you can see that it's still working the exact same way. There we go. And if I look at the output log, you can see the player detected is firing all the time. Player detected, player detected, player detected, right? Okay. I'll also clear on pi so we can see that next time. Okay, so this is good. So this is a good thing. So now that we have this and we've tested it, we want to be able to see it. But before we do that, let's put this up on DevOps. So again, with File, Save All. And we're going to go here and I'm going to go to View Terminal. And we're going to say git commit -m. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, when it lets me, added on sensing. That I'm still looking at ICE 9. I'm going to fix that in a second. Added upon sensing. There we go. To enemy. Chugging along today, my friends. Chugging along, chugging along. Like it's got a lot to add. Okay. Git push. There we go. What I want to do, just because it bothers me, is I'm just going to File, Save All, just to keep track of things right, because I'm discombobulated a little bit. I'll even close off the Visual Studio project one sec. And when I do, I'm just going to refresh, just make sure that this is all good. It is. I'm just going to go to my projects, and what I want to do is I want to rename it from ICE 9 to ICE 10, because that's what it should be. It's just a folder rename. It's going to go up in the right place anyway. And just make sure I don't have an ICE 10. I do have an ICE 10 in here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and kill this. And then we can go back into our regular folder. There we go. Cut that. Go back to here and paste. There we go. So that's what I wanted to do. I just want to move things around so I'm organized nicely. And then we'll just launch Visual Studio again. And from there, I'll launch Unreal Engine just to, stay organized. Okay, so again, nothing new. Like you've seen how we can add new components. This is the same thing we've done multiple times. And as soon as this launches, then what we want to do is I want to add in a debug view, and we can do that in the enemy.h. Okay, so we're going to add that in. Might as well go into Visual Studio because from there we don't have to be in the editor anyway. Okay, so here we are in Visual Studio. And again, on the .h side, in the protected section, so that's in this section right here, right? Then what we want to add in is two properties. So one of them is the site radius, how far we've seen. Instead of making it hard-coded, if we reveal these things or expose them, just like we did with Unity, we don't want anything hard-coded because we want it to be something we can modify in the editor easily. So I'm going to grab all these. And this is just a property, so back to this. Feels like going there. There we go. So again, I'm probably going to put them somewhere before the functions, but after the timer handle, when this thing feels like doing its thing. Again, I love ReSharper. I really do. One thing I always note with ReSharper is the time it takes for it to kind of detect everything. It really slows down the load, right? So because of course it adds more load. You know what? There's enemy properties up here and down here. I think I'll put that up here. Yeah. All right, so that is site radius, and we're going to use those things. The other thing that we want to add in is a function called enable debug. Again, it's in the protected section, so we're going to grab this stuff. This is a type of action. There he is again. So here's action. And this is a great place to put that anywhere here as a function. I probably will put it at the end because it doesn't really matter where it goes. There we go. Okay, so that's what that is. Enable debug view. I want to kind of this is just a function we have to declare, but there's no function body. Believe it or not, ReSharper's still doing its thing like crazy, and I'm probably bugging out because of how hard it's working. There we are. And there's the enable debug view function. Very, very good. So now that we have that, we want to update in the constructor function. We want to change the hard-coded values to these values we just created. So back up here. Instead of having hard-coded values like this, we want to change them to site radius for this one. Site radius. And we want to change this to peripheral viewing angle, right? Vision angle. Those two things. And then inside of the enable debug function, I wonder why my jumping isn't enabled here. That's fine. Then we can do this. So let me talk about what this does. So first we check to see if this function is enabled or not. If it's enabled, and again, this is a function we're going to use for now in Blueprints. We're going to get you to rewrite this in C++ later on, but it's going to draw a debug cone. That is a default something that we can draw. You know, we have drawing tools in Unreal Engine that's built in, which is pretty cool. It's going to use the actor location and the actor forward vector for the direction, and the length is going to be the site radius. Once we have that, we can, you know, kind of put in the angle, width, and height, and that is just the degrees to radians peripheral vision angle divided by 2. And then we can decide on how complex this cone is going to be. We're only going to give it 12 sides, and we're going to make it yellow so we can see it. Okay, so that's what the enable debug view does. Okay. And once we've done that, let's go back into the save all, and then Control F5, and go back into the editor, and we should be able to see this enable debug view function that's available to us in Blueprints. And we're going to use that in the tick function in the enemy, so we can actually see, we can actually visualize the cone, the vision cone that's going to be out there. Okay. Let's see how this works officially when it finally gets done. It's amazing, you know. I love my tools, I really do, but and by the way, I don't think it can get much faster even if you have a much better machine. My machine is, like I said, an i9 10900K, so it's a few generations back. But I do have an RTX 4070 and good memory and all that stuff. I am, though, broadcasting on YouTube and on Zoom and blah, 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 and that does slow me down. It takes up quite a few cycles for me. So let's see where we are with this. Yeah, it is working. Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't want to lapse there for a second. So it's not like I don't have a machine that's capable. It's just I'm making it chug with all the stuff I'm doing. All right, so then now back here, what I want to do is in the tick function, for me to see something, I can call that new thing. So if I do enable debug, that's the new function we just wrote, right? And it's available to us in Blueprints. So I'm going to prototype it here, but later on for your in-class exercise 10, I'm going to get you to rewrite the stuff that's in here in C++. So I'm going to enable it. I'm going to click on enable. This is very convenient for us because we can turn on and turn off what this looks like, you know, kind of thing. So let's take a look here, compile and save. And then we kind of press play. Now you should see this debug cone. There it is. Is it coming closer to me? And as long as I'm outside its radius, right, this enemy doesn't quite see me. Again, realistic or not, you can make it much longer. But now I can go right behind him. This is different behavior because I can go right behind him now. And notice how I'm within his, it said attack action because I'm close enough to him, even though he hasn't been able to see me physically, that I'm so close that he still is detecting me. Now, unless I go here in front of him, then you can see that he's going to, the player was detected, but, you know, take a look. Once I run away, he just stops. And that's kind of where we were last time. But he detects me, and as long as I'm within his sight, he's going to chase me. But if once he gets to me, then he'll stop. Okay. But that is the debug view, which is basically just a a way of detecting his sight radius. It's very convenient, so we can see that it's working. Okay. And this is great. Let's put this up on DevOps. So again, view terminal, and I want to save all here, and I also want to file save all here. This is important to do, file save all. And then we're going to say, sorry, git a dot, git commit when it feels like doing it. The engine's open too. Minus M, and we'll say added enable debug view function to visualize the pawn sensing. Yeah, that's all we did there. And I'll let us do his thing. Next, now that we've got this, the next thing is I want to create an enemy attack montage. And this is becoming more, we're going to go back to the creative side for a second with this. So again, I have some stuff already. So inside of my blueprints, I have my enemy. Enemy has animations and rigs. That's what I have. Inside my animations folder, what I also want is I want to create an anim montage of this sword and shield attack anim 1. Remember, anims are just animation sequences, so I can search for that. Here it is. I'm going to right click, and I want to create an anim montage. And I'm going to call this am underscore enemy attack montage, if I'm not wrong. And I want to put this in its own folder called montages. So inside the animation folder like that. So the animation folder right now, we're going to say new folder. We're going to call this montages. There we go. And then we can take my enemy montage and move it in there. And inside of my montage, enemy attack montage here, we can open that up so you can see what it looks like. So right now all we have is like one attack, and this is, notice a couple things here, how the enemy kind of moves, right? And that is, he physically shifts position with this animation. And the reason for this is because this animation is going to be using root motion. Root motion, in order for you to make that happen, stop this now, with your animations that you choose, whether you're from Mixamo or someplace else, just note that from a skeleton tree perspective, you do need the root bone. So the root bone is not available by default from Mixamo. Okay, so what I've gone ahead and done for you is I've gone through every animation and added the root bone. Now I've used a batch process to do this. This is not just like random. But without the root bone, then the root motion will not work, even if you download it or whatever. So that's something to note. You need the root bone for the root animation. I've also added the root bone to our characters, skeleton, our armature, because later on when we do a dodge, we want to do the same thing. We want to use root motion to get out of the way, and we want to use the animation itself. Root motion basically just says follow where the animation takes us when it comes to moving the character in the scene, right? As opposed to moving them through our keys, our command keys that we're using, WASD and so on. So that's the first thing. So first we have this, the first one, and what we want is we want to have two more. One of them is sword and shield attack 2. So again, I'm just going to go to the asset browser here like we did before for ours, and grab that and drag it in. And we'll do the same thing with sword and shield attack 3. So again, all I'm doing is filtering here, and I'm grabbing this and bringing it in. So there's 3 little animations. What I want to do is I want to call this attack 1, this section. And I'm going to get another montage section. We'll call that attack 2, just like we've done before. So again, we want to do snap it right to the beginning of this animation, and a new montage section called attack 3. Again, we want to make sure that it snaps right to the beginning of this animation. I want to go back to the montage sections and clear it so they're not related. So they're not going to run from one to the other. It's not going to run forward from all those. And again, to visualize what these look like, let's look at this one. So here's the next one. Okay, that's not bad. And then here's a third one where he kind of does a running jump. So, right? He just jumps down like this. So that's what he does. So those are the three different types of animations. Now there's some issues with them, and we'll fix them in a second. So that is what we've done so far. So we talked about root motion. So again, there's a couple problems. So first, one thing that we're going to see is that it uses root motion, and that means that the enemy is going to change location as it attacks the player. And the problem with this is the player's right in front of you, right? So imagine, let's go back to this one, right? The player's in front of you, like right here in front of you, and then this guy does one of these. So he kind of goes through and look what happens there. The player's right in front of him. So then he missed the player. He's way over here now, right? So that's not good. It's a neat looking attack, but doesn't make sense, right? And here's the next one. So then what about this one? Oh, right? So this one's the same thing. So he's kind of moving forward, and maybe he actually moved through the player before he attacked him. And then there's this one, which is really problematic. Take a look at this one. So he jumps up and maybe goes right over the player's head when he attacks him, right? So how does the enemy gauge its distance between his attack and where the player is? We can use a technique called motion warping. That's what we're going to use for this to work. So the other thing is that we want to play a random thing. So the first problem is this. We're going to miss every single time because of that, right? The other one is we want to play a random montage section in the, just like we did in the main character class. And we don't want to duplicate Claude, which means, again, it kind of sets us up to think about, well, maybe we need a new superclass. And remember what a superclass is a class that has child classes. And this new superclass is going to be a superclass that's not just for, by the way, superclass could be base class, right? Kind of that's also a thing, or a parent class. The same words, different words mean the same thing. For both the enemy and the player. So both the enemy and the player use the same class, like I mentioned earlier, so that way there's less duplication of code. And we can look at common code elements that exist that we want to reuse, and we can include them in the superclass, but only them. So only the stuff that is common between both the character and the enemy. So the next thing we want to do then is we want to do this. But before we go there, it's going to tell us to do this later, but I talked about root motion, but we want to set this up. So if you double click on each of these animations, let's double click on the first one. This is the first one here. And if I go to asset details, I want you to scroll down, and there is a check mark for enable root motion. You need to enable this thing or else it won't work. So click on that, enable root motion. Okay. That's the first thing. And then let's do that. And then the next thing is we want to do the same thing for the other ones. So I'm going to go back to the enemy montage and go back to this one. So this is, again, another one that we want to do that. So I'm going to go scroll down and enable root motion, click. Check that, right? And the same thing goes with the third one. So, but third one, I want to go here, double click. And just like I did for the other ones, I want to click on enable root motion here. Okay, so this actually enables it. Now, let me show you something. Let me show you what this does. So if I go back to the montage now, take a look at what it has here. It has a little path that it creates, and it basically shows you a spline of where it's going to move, where they actually, okay, this is new in 5.54. 5.44 did not have this line, I don't believe. And you can see what it does. So if you actually see the next one, if I go here, if I press play, it's going to go to the next part. This is the next part of the action. Okay. And then after that part, it's going to jump. So you can see what this does. Take a look. Oh, right. Kind of does one of those. And it kind of, kind of follows that spline when it comes to movement. And what it does for this, how it creates this thing is there is a if you notice, there is a root pivot point for the character, and that pivot point, when it moves for the character, whether it goes up or around or whatever, it creates this path dynamically. Okay, and it's just for us to know like what this thing is going to look like when it actually moves. It's kind of a neat thing. Okay, so that is the enemy attack montage, and now once we've got that ready to go, file, save all. Let's put that. So far, this is the first version. We're going to put this up on DevOps. So get at that. I love when this takes so long. No, I don't. But it does take long, no matter what I do. And for you guys, it might be like really, really fast. For me, git commit -m, and we're going to say added enemy attack montage version 1, because we're going to make changes to this thing in a second. We're going to add in some more notifies and stuff like that to this thing to make sure that it does the motion working properly as well as everything else. So git push. There we go. Okay, so back to this. So we want to make a superclass. And again, I'm going to make a new C++ class here, new C++ class. It's going to be of type character because it's going to be kind of the superclass for both the main character and the enemy, all right? So it has to be a character class because both of them inherit from that, right? So next, we're going to call this base character, right? Because that's what it's asking us to do, make the new base character class. And I'm going to create that class, okay? So again, one thing to note is that there's two parts to this. It's not just creating the files, but also waiting for the patch to go through. You got to be patient. I know some people are sometimes they rush forward and they do this. They close off this window or something weird like that, and then things break. And they're like, I don't know why, but if things broke, well, you close something. So just wait till this is done, especially this live coding piece that comes up. If you see this up, like I said again, just wait for it to finish, and then you have less issues. Okay, if you don't wait for this to finish, not finish it until you see that green part at the bottom, right? Now let's wait for it. So it rebuilds everything. You notice what it does, rebuilds, and at the end, if everything goes well, you see this like successfully patched part, which is this. Okay, now you know you're ready to go. So now that we have that, we'll file, save all, and we'll close off the editor, reload the project. And then once that's done, let's go here. Once that's done, let's do some cleanup again, like normal. So we'll go into this, and we'll do this, 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 and this. Okay, so then we'll move all these over. So we'll kind of do the same thing we've been doing a lot of times, which is just basically just massaging this the default boilerplate code so that it's not annoying. So how do we use this? Well, we can actually use it now, even with nothing in it. We can use this base class right away. And why is that? Because basically it's just a character. Right now it doesn't do anything. It's not adding anything new, right? So in enemy.h, what we can say is, instead of it inheriting from our base character that's like built in, we can make it inherit from our base character .h, this one. Okay, so as you see here, that's what we're going to do, base character. So if I did that, if I said something like a base character, this one, then you're going to see that it adds in a reference to base character. Now, question for you. Should we, for the class, forward declare? What do you think? Yes or no? What are your thoughts here, guys? And I'm going to do this for the enemy and for the player, which is main character. So what do you think? Should we? A base character. So the question is, should we forward declare instead of include? What are your thoughts? Hello. Anybody there?
Forward declare?
So I'd like to say yes, right? But we can't. Even though I'd like to forward declare the base character class, the problem with it is that there's no other place to define it. This, when we comes to inheritance, this part here, we're saying that main character and the colon beside main character, when we're declaring the class, it basically says extends or inherits from this. It needs to know what this is, you know, before it does everything else. So that means that our includes are going to include base character.h. There really isn't a neat way of doing this around this. Base character.h is going to be included in here because we need to have all that knowledge, ahead of time. We can't just do it on the CPP side because there's just so much to do with base character. So that's why we must do it this way. So base character now is going to be the superclass of both these two other things. So that's the first thing. So now let's close off the, we already closed off the editor? We did. I think we already closed off the editor. Save all. Control F5. And let's relaunch the editor now. And what it's going to give us is that both classes now should run just like before because there's no difference. Like we haven't added anything to base character, so therefore it should just work. And the reason why I'm doing this, like actually launching the editor again, is to make sure that it takes, that we actually have that class in place and that everything is working. We really want to test it because now what we've done is we've created almost like a parent before the other two classes. We have the parent class, which is base character, and then we have enemy. On the other side, we have main character, okay? And that little triangle. So that's what we have. So now, just close this out for a second. We still see that enemy inherits from the enemy superclass, right? Which is good. But the main test is, can we play, right? And as long as we can do this, and we can do the same thing we did before, we know that we didn't miss anything out. A couple things to note here is we see base character, and we know that enemy derives from base character. You can see that because if I hover over this thing, it tells you right there, parent class is base character. And same thing with main character. It's also base character. That's important to note. Next, once we've done that, now we're going to move some common properties. So again, what we're going to do is back to Unreal Engine. We're going to go File, Save All, and we're going to close off this thing. Okay. So moving common properties. Some of the common properties that we want to move from main character to base character are these. We want to move in the attack montage and the attack montage sections. So back to main character for a second. Notice that we have way down here. So here's attack montage sections. We're going to move that over. I'm going to grab this. So let's say attack montage sections. So I'm cutting it from my main character and going back to base character. And we're going to put that inside the protected section, base character dot, here. So this is the first thing. So we're adding this back in, right? So again, this is like attack 1, attack 2, attack 3. It tells you what BP underscore main character does, right? So it's kind of safe to move it that way. The other one we want to move is the U property attack montage itself. So wherever that is in the main character. So attack montage, this one. So this is the animation montages. And I'm just going to cut this one and put it back in base character right here. So this is kind of up here. I'm going to put that in there. So there's the attack montages, animation montages. I'm also going to take this comment because we're going to have other montages for the main character, like this one, the equip montage. And we'll put that comment back in there. There we go. So that's the first thing. So we also have to forward declare UN montage because now in the base character, we never had any of that. So let's do that. So we'll say, forward declarations, and we'll put in UN montage. That's a class, right? So that takes care of this right here because we're using it here in base character, but it doesn't know anything about UN montage, and it'll fail. So that's this part. Next, now that we want to do that, we're still working with the .h files. We want to add in, again, we want to move some helper functions from main character to base character, and these are the ones we want to move. So again, I'm not copy pasting here because I want to move them. So I'm going back to here and moving the ones I want. So for example, we need to move play montage section and play random montage section and play attack montage. These things right here, these three, I want to cut them, right? And I'm going to put them inside of my base character.h as an example in the protected section. Like so, okay? Notice that there are, we need to declare what these are. These are functions. So again, I'm going to take this little comment, go back to my main character. There is another one, which is this one. Play equip montage is going to stay, right? So that's not going because the enemy's not going to equip themselves right now. Okay, all we're doing is we're just moving the stuff over that the enemy is going to use as well. Okay. All right, so that is there. And we also want to generate the functions. So that's in here. Then I want to go to, because I might as well take advantage of ReSharper and generate definitions. We can do them individually as well, but here I'm just going to press finish. And it should generate the definitions here in the .cpp. Okay. Then what I want to do is we want to move the code over for the main character to the base character for those functions. So again, I'm going to go back to my main character.cpp where we have errors now because that code doesn't exist anymore, these ones. And we're just going to copy these over like this, the body of the code, and then we'll get rid of it. So copy and then paste. Should be in the same order. That's play montage section that is moved over, right? This is random montage section, copy, and then move over. So I'm moving these things over. And then finally, this last one, which is just this return, copy, and then down here, paste. So once I have all of these in base character, then I can go back to main character and remove them because there's no more definitions for these specific to just main character. Save. And save all. So we've done these parts, okay? And now we want to compile and control F5 and see if it still works. So let's try that. So control F5. So again, the process for, and we'll take a short break soon. The process for doing this is we identify common functions that both subclasses, the enemy in this case, and the main character, are going to use, right? So that's the same things. If they're the exact same and we can reuse the code, yay, because now we've saved a pile of code we've already written. We don't want to duplicate it. And the great thing is if we have it in the base class, if we want to change something to improve something, both child classes get improved. On the downside, if we break something on the parent class, both child classes are broken, right? So that's kind of what inheritance kind of gives us, kind of a two-edged sword. Let's go back to this. So one thing to check is if I go to combat in the main character, right, we should see, and this is important, this is the enemy, sorry. Let's go back to the main character. There's a main character's blueprint. I'm going to open it up. And if I search for combat, like I said, this is important. Notice that we still have the equip montage and the attack montage. Even though we moved it over, we still have them, right? So one good thing about this that Unreal Engine does is it doesn't unlink things like Unity does. If we were to do this in Unity, everything would be wiped out. You'd have to relink everything by hand. So I kind of like this more, right? Same thing with the array elements. The array elements for the sections for the montage that we just made, attack 1, 2, 3, for the main character that we already previously had done, still here, which is good. We should be able to use the main character the same way. Where we have to add them in is the enemy. So the enemy now has an attack montage, which we can specify. And we can also add in the 3 sections, 1, 2, 3. And we can add in attack 1, attack 2, attack 3. Okay, compile and save. So those are the sections that we were missing on the enemy side. Now we have the exact same functionality potentially when we do random attacks and stuff like that with the enemy. Let's test and see if everything still works as it did. We haven't programmed the attack for it to attack yet, but we should see that if a character picks up the item, here it is, and I should be able to still do random attacks. There's some problems there, but random attacks like I did before. All the same stuff that we did before we had this class happen, okay? So that is there, and we've modified this, and that is where I want to take a pause before we move on and take a short break. Let's file, save all, and what we're going to do now is we're going to put this up on DevOps. So I'm going to go here and go View, Terminal, say get a dot. We want to just put up that base class because that's the thing that's changed. So we're going to say added base character class, which is what that is, right? Git commit -m. We'll say added base character class. Okay, and we did more. We actually, kind of enabled it and a bunch of stuff. Like, again, I could have done a few more commits here if I really wanted to be a stickler. If I wanted to like back up, just in case I was worried I messed things up. I don't want to break my build. Alternatively, what I could have done is done this all in a branch, my own branch, and then merged it back in to the main branch when I'm ready to go. All right, this is great. So we'll take a short break. We're sitting at 9:17. Let's take 10 minutes. We'll come back at around 9:27. Let's make it even, 9:30. And then when we come back, we'll continue. All right, we'll get some coffee and all that kind of stuff. I'll stop recording now.